I'm Joey.
I'm Jason.
And this is Metal
Monster
Review. Today we're going to discuss a movie from 1973. This is a classic horror film. It's got a big following. Everybody has heard it, and most people have had an opportunity to see it at some point in their life. Today we're going to discuss Tobe Hooper's 1973, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What can you say about this film? There's so much to say about it. I mean, look, it's a slasher classic. I mean, just the concept alone. You have a family living in this isolated farmland of Texas who are just a family of cannibals. And what happens here is you get a couple people heading down to Texas. They're investigating some grave robberies, and they're there to visit the estate of their grandfather and spend a little bit of time at his estate, and end up getting mixed up with this family. Jason, would you like to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, like you said, they go to visit the family's home place, and they want to go. Kirk and his girlfriend want to go swimming at the swimming hole, but it's all dried up. Then they hear a generator in the distance, and they happen to be low on gas, and they want to go to try to panhandle some gas. I give them a couple bucks, then we'll come back, give them more money for the gas.
Front of his guitar, you know, as collateral.
And then it goes downhill from there.
Exactly. But the film opens up with two mutilated corpses. Pretty much almost look like they're infused together, but you could tell they're probably just set up on top of each other. And they're talking about all this grave robbery that's going on. And I love that as an opening scene. You know what I mean? This film it's so grainy.
And it's like the beginning of it's just iconic, with just like the sound of the camera.
Yes, the sound effects.
And the flash, you get a flash of the corpse, and another that weird.
No, I love that for sure.
Iconic.
I love that for
sure. As
soon
as you hear that, who's watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Exactly. And you realize that, and that's what it has come down to, because you pretty much just reiterate this. You hear this sound, and you just immediately assume, like, oh, well, that sounds like something from Texas Chainsaw. Oh, cool, it is. And so it's almost been like embedded with you a little bit there. But we're going to start here a little bit. We're going bouncing around a little bit here, but one thing I want to mention in the beginning is that the opening scene you'll see with, you know, the mutated, well, not mutated, you see the almost like the infused corpses, but when you get a look at the road and you see that dead armadillo, that was a real armadillo. They actually picked up roadkill, studied a little taxidermy, kind of pieced and glued him, made him just look just natural as can be, and had him there, laying there on the road.
Another thing about this movie is, I remember when I was a kid seeing this at the tape store, and I always wanted to rent it. My mom would always tell me, no, that's too gory movie for you. But in honesty, there's not tons of blood shed in this movie.
And I like how you brought that point up, because you immediately affiliate this movie with lots of gore.
Yeah.
You know, and you hear a chainsaw massacre, but you don't see really any blood. All the chainsaw killings.
My mother lied to me.
You're going to have a talk with your mother now.
I could have been watching this movie when I was 9 years old.
But all the chainsaw killings happen off screen, so it almost gives you like this maybe psychosomatic effect that you're kind of putting this into perspective and saying, okay, here's somebody getting their head chopped off with the chainsaw, cut off, not chopped, forgive me, getting their head cut off, but really you don't see anything. You hear the chainsaw going, you see the fumes going from the gas, but that's it. You don't see anything, and that's one thing that I do like about this movie. It helps you use your imagination. And when you take a look at this, one of my favorite parts is that when Kirk first enters the house.
Oh, that's my favorite part.
And you hear like these pig squeals, and he's walking up this little ramp here up to the door, and the door just opens, and you see Leatherface standing there wearing a mask, and the mask is made of human flesh. I mean, and he hits him with the hammer, and he just gets dropped like an old pair of shoes. He's convulsing. And then he just drags him inside, and the door slams, and you just hear that dun sound.
Yeah, that's just,
and that is one of the
that door.
creepiest scenes. So then his girlfriend comes looking for him inside the house, and she stumbles and sees that there's furniture made from from like different bones of animals and even human bones, really. And one interesting thing was about this movie that is the bones were real. You know what I mean? There was nothing stock about this. And the actual set in the house that they used, being say, hey, Texas is known for being a real fucking hot state. Okay? So they're filming here in summertime. The heat's going, or, from outside. It's not smelling too good. It's smelling pretty ripe. So you're kind of getting into the right setting for what you're about to get into.
I'd like to mention that the cast in this movie too, it's not like no super big name people, but I tell you what, everyone that played in this movie, you sort of felt for him. Like I really like Franklin, the disabled, Sally's disabled brother.
Yeah,
he just played that part so good. Just I don't know, the way he played the part.
Yeah, and moving around in that wheelchair was not an easy thing to do because it wasn't really wheelchair accessible. So moving around this farm area here in Texas, and it wasn't really overly accessible for him. But I agree with you, he did play that well. And let's not forget here, one of the other characters I think did a really good job was, I believe the actor's name was Edwin Neal. Edwin Neal, I believe. He played the hitchhiker. And this guy played a creepy psycho, and he makes you think twice about picking up hitchhikers. When he picked them up and they're talking about how things really happen at a slaughterhouse, and he pulls out a straight razor out of his shoe, and he's like, I have this knife. It's a good knife. Well, it's not a knife. It's a straight razor. But you see where he's going here. We're not going to be that technical about it. And Franklin's pissing around with this penknife that he has, and he ends up grabbing the knife out of his hand and ends up cutting himself and then lacerating Franklin with that straight razor that was hidden in his boot. It makes you think twice about picking up hitchhikers. So that's one thing you're going to learn from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is you don't pick up hitchhikers.
I was just going to mention that. If you watch this movie, you learn lots of survival tips in life. Number one, what he just said, don't pick up hitchhikers. Number two, always check your gas level.
Yeah, they stopped for gas, ran out of gas, and they seemed like that Ford van or whatever they were driving was a real gas guzzler. You know what I mean? We're probably rocking at 10 miles to the gallon here, you know what I mean? So, I agree with you. What else can you recommend about that never do?
Number three, never stop at a random barbecue shop.
No.
You don't find out till later in the movie that poor Franklin was eating the human part when they brought, I got barbecue.
That's
and
right.
Franklin, half the beginning of the movie, Franklin has this piece of meat in his mouth he's gnawing on.
Yeah, and then to think of, what are you really chewing on, Franklin? Let's talk about that for a moment.
The scene when Sally runs getting chased by Leatherface, and she somehow makes it back to that gas/barbecue shop. And then when that guy's coming after her, before he comes after her, she notices the grill up there. You just see like all these human torsos and stuff roasting over the fire. You're like, oh my God, Franklin was probably going on a finger.
That's right. And death metal band Mortician actually had an album, Hacked Up for Barbecue, which was based off of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. So there has been some lasting effect here with it.
One little thing that always stuck me about this movie was the grandpa.
Yes.
What was he? Was he still human, or?
To me, he was just like, almost looks like this swiveled up corpse. I mean, look, he's got enough movement. I mean, he's responsive. So, one of the characteristics of life is responding to a stimuli. So when they would say grandpa, he was able to, react to that. And there was a scene here, and it's referred to as the dinner scene, where Franklin's sister Sally is held captive by the hitchhiker and his family, which are the cannibals there, and they have her tied to the chair, and they're going to kill her, and they're going to just say, well, we'll let Grandpa do this. So you have this it almost looks like how do you want to put this, like a some type of corpse here, really, shriveled up corpse, but he's still alive, so it's hard to describe. And they actually are handing him a hammer, and they're holding her head over a bucket, and they're having him smack her in the head with this hammer. And it's a graphic, disturbing scene.
They're trying to like hold the hammer in his hand, but they're like letting him swing, but they're like holding the hammer, his arms just going like that, and it's just slowly tapping her in the head. But it's, I'm sure I still goddamn hurt. But
oh yeah, I mean, any way you look at it. So they're hitting her in the head with a hammer, and they're like, Grandpa, he's the best. He's the fastest killer. He's the best killer. You know what I mean? One swift hit and you're done, and it's just such a graphic scene. But one thing that I liked is when that she finally comes to and she's strapped to the chair before this happens, the hammer incident. She begins screaming, and they all start screaming and mimicking her. You know what I mean? Like they're having fun. And that's just how you know that you're dealing with some absolute psychopaths.
When you're talking about that dinner scene, whenever the hitchhiker walks in, he realizes who it is. He wanted them to take them to his house to have dinner, but they said, no, we're in a hurry. We're going to get going. Then he went ape shit, and they kicked him out. But then he realized it was her. He's like, I thought you were in a hurry.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, he was saying my brother makes the best head cheese. And I heard this rumor years ago, and I don't know if it's true or not, or just hearsay or shit, but that the original title that they were going to go with for that movie was called Head Cheese.
I didn't hear nothing.
And I didn't know if that was just some wild hearsay rumor, or if there was any truth to that. I kind of would like to know if there was any truth to that. But the filming for this movie, really, it was pretty rough on the whole crew. Because, like I mentioned a little while ago, they were actually using real bones. And being that they're filming in Texas, Texas is known for being a real fucking hot state. That actor Gunnar Henson, who played Leatherface, had to wear that same ensemble for 3 weeks. And they were not allowed to wash his clothes because they were worried that it might alter the look of the clothes or the color. And could you imagine just the odors and everything that you're working with?
Oh, I can imagine.
That would just be miserable. And to be wearing these heavy clothes and sweating like that and for 3 weeks, the shooting must have been hell. An absolute hell. But what they got out of it was well worth it.
Another one of my favorite scenes is, I think it's a pretty famous scene too, at the end of the movie when Sally gets away. Leatherface does the famous chainsaw dance. He just has a chainsaw. He's just swinging it around.
Swinging that around.
Another question I have, this movie has, to me, like 2 funny parts I think is hilarious. But what I'm talking about right now is when the truck driver is driving the big truck, and Sally like runs up to it, the Leatherface, he like gets out of the truck, and he just fucking sees Leatherface, he just takes off running. Whatever happened to that guy?
We never found out what happened. I mean, you could immediately assume, say, okay, Leatherface chased him and killed him, because remember, he was running towards the direction of the farmhouse, if I'm correct. But maybe I'm wrong. Hey, maybe I'm wrong in the direction.
I mean, it was just comical. Like, as soon as he got out of the truck, he seen him. He turns around and starts.
But my question is, why the hell wouldn't he just jump back in the truck? Remember, they jumped in the truck, slid over the front, and jumped out the passenger side door. Well, I would have just said, look, let's start the truck and go. But then yet again, I liked how the movie ended because of her jumping in. Spoilers ahead. Throwing that out there. Spoilers ahead. When she jumped in that truck and Leatherface it was a Chevy. Jumped into the Chevy because it stalled out. You know what I mean? And he's got the chainsaw and he's coming up to her and the truck finally starts and she's screaming, go, go, go. And has this hysterical just laughing and screaming, and she's just blood soaked because she just went through fucking hell to get out of that house. and then him swinging the chainsaw, and that's how the movie ends. This is a classic horror movie. I would love to see something like this in a drive-in setting. If you have never seen this movie before, hey, sit down and give this a watch. It is really worth it.
The other thing I like about Leatherface in this movie is when you got all these reboots coming out now, when they remake the killer, they got to go overkill. Oh, let's make him 7 feet tall. Let's make him fucking Hulk Hogan. Leatherface is none of that in this movie. He's just like an average height man, slightly overweight, but the emotion he puts in the characters just makes him fucking creepy and scary.
And I think that's what does it. I think, and I agree with you. It's that emotion.
He shows him emotions. Like when Kirk came to the house, Leatherface took care of that. Then his girlfriend came. Then he started getting. You can tell he's getting paranoid. Like, oh my god, people's coming in the house. He's looking out the window, sitting there, and then sitting in the chair, going like that. It's just you can tell there's something wrong with him.
Yeah, and he's seen it more like there's invaders coming into my home, and this is what he's doing to protect himself. You know, it's a strange situation by all means, but I agree with you because they always have to beef these people up like you know like there's something like out of the WWE or something like that, and even like take a consideration Rob Zombie's Halloween. You know, Michael Myers is flipping cars. Like, what the fuck? This is Halloween, not the Incredible Hulk. You know what I mean? I'm just being straightforward with you here. So I like the point that you made there, and I do agree with you there. You had somebody here who just was good with tools. So, do you have anything else you would like to add with Texas Chainsaw?
Just definitely check it out. If you haven't seen it, if you have seen it, watch it fucking again.
Yeah, you can never get enough of it. That's for sure. I'm Joey.
I'm Jason.
And this is Metal
Monster
Review.